In order to ensure that everyone can clearly hear the presenter and hopefully avoid any technical difficulties, I'll be muting everyone but our presenter. But I'm still going to ask you to please mute your line by pressing *# or by selecting the mute feature on your desk phone or mobile device, whichever you're calling in from today. Again, we please ask that you share your questions and comments in the Q&A pod, which you'll find in the lower left-hand corner of the presentation window once I pull it up. Once the presentation is complete, we'll help field those questions and comments as we go, and Wally will share any feedback that he has. We'll also, again, be sharing the recording, the closed captioning transcript, and Wally will be sure to forward me his presentation, and we'll get that all sent out after everything's said and done. And I've made sure to include, again, this year's 2016 Community of Practice schedule. It'll be on the last page in the lower left-hand corner for you to download at the end of the webinar. So thanks again for joining us. We're really excited to have you, and I'll hand it over to David to introduce our presenter.
Thank you, Jessica. Welcome, everybody. If you remember from the end of last year, Jessica bailed out on us the last couple of meetings because of this baby deal, I guess. So we're very excited to have Jessica back with us to kick off the new year. And she said you'll have an opportunity to download our Community of Practice schedule, but we do have 9 Community of Practice calls scheduled over the next 9 months. They are scheduled for the 3rd Tuesday at 1 o'clock, so kind of bookmark this and plan ahead. We have a great series of events that kind of build on each other, and we're very excited to get started with Wally Talbit. Wally is the Director of Community Employment Services at Northwest Center in the state of Washington in Seattle. And for some of you who have been involved with Iowa employment efforts in the beginning, you remember that Washington was one of our mentor states to begin with. And we've taken great pride in working with the state of Washington and have learned quite a bit from the different subject matter experts that Washington has. They've been at the forefront of employment and some of our discussion points for many years. And so it's very appropriate that we kick off today's meeting hearing a little bit from the state of Washington. And Wally's going to talk to us a little bit about maintaining a positive and motivated employment team as we look at all the challenges that we each face. So I think it's a great way to kick it off, and Wally, we'll turn it over to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, you guys. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be speaking to you Iowa people again. I really enjoyed my time when I was out there last October. One nice thing about webinars is that, you can't see me, so I could be in my pajamas, eating my Fruit Loops, watching The View or whatever. But it's kind of fun to be doing this, and I'm excited that so many people want to talk about this. And if I talk too fast for some of the captioners, that's the Filipino blood in me. So let me know if I need to slow down. We've only got a few minutes, obviously, for this topic, and this is something that we could speak about forever. And the reason we the impetus and how it all started in our state is that, we're really collaborative with other agencies. And when we started talking about the work that we do, we realized that some had such high turnover and had unhappy staff, and some agencies who did really well at keeping the people they had and making them be really engaged in the work that we do. And so the conversations this all started about 3-4 years ago, where we made it a responsibility to say, how do we look at getting our people in, getting them to be better, and then getting them to stay? Because, a lot of the times if you look at all the trainings that are out there, it's about how to be a better job developer, how to be, person-centered planning. But all of that great work, unless you have the right people in there, or you don't have enough people, or people keep leaving, then all of that practicum and all of that process, that kind of goes to waste. And we have to kind of start at the front end and start with our agency, our team, our culture, which is a powerful word, and getting the right people on board, the recruit, the train, and the retain. So that's what we're here for. And let me know if you I bet, well, you press your PJs. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm reading the comments on here. And yes, please, if you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. Some of this, if you've been part of the Recruit, Train, Retain series in Iowa, this will be kind of repetitive for you, but there's some other stuff here, and if it kind of raises another question or something that you want to ask, please feel free to ask. So before we started all of this, we decided to say, why is important? So here is why it's so important. Because employees who walk out the door will cost their companies up to 200% of their salaries to replace. And we're looking at retraining, all the cost of any conferences or other learnings that they've done, as well as the lost revenue that you'll have. Outcomes and productivity suffer. We understand that, right? As soon as someone goes, who's going to carry on the caseload? Who's going to continue working? Who's going to find the job? Who's going to coach that person? And this is really important. You know, we always lean on our team and we say, look, someone left, Joe left, how do we carry the load? And then everyone steps up, which is great, but everyone's overworked. They suddenly have to take on another client or two more clients. They suddenly have to do more job development. It's scattered, and the team becomes fractured and fragmented. And some teams are really vocal about that, and then the ones actually which is more dangerous are the ones who are festering in kind of that pain and that chaos and don't say anything, and then they get burnt out. Because here I am again having to carry the load because more people are leaving. The team morale suffers. We've talked about that. Lost knowledge. You know, we kind of forget that because you've got Joe who was working with Sally for a very long time and knows Sally's, skills, knows Sally's kind of behaviors, knows a lot about Sally, and then Joe leaves and someone has to take Sally on, and then they have to start from scratch again. And that's hard to do because all of that momentum you've had with that individual or with an employer is suddenly gone. So how do you pick that up? Okay? And this is really important, and I think a lot of people can attest to this. Your customers lose faith and confidence in your service. You know, we work a lot with our VR system here in Washington. They're going to know, and they're going to realize, wait, wow, Northwest Center, they've got people leaving. Maybe I shouldn't refer them clients. So that's really important. So before we got started on this, with this whole concept of the recruiting and retraining, myself and some other colleagues who were involved in this decided to poll some of the agencies out there. We polled direct service staff, executive directors, managers, everyone as much as we could to say, well, how do we get good people to stay? And this is the feedback and the answers they gave us. You can see is the clear of and belief in the mission, making sure that they're nurtured, and again, this is their words, nurtured, mentored, cultivated, celebrating the victories, customizing positions for job developers, publicly recognizing staff strengths and skills, creative responsibility, and we can get to that a little bit. Staff retreats, they're looking for some fun opportunities for advancement, but they also said networking. Very clear expectations and goal, and lead and support people to want to stay rather than rewarding people or asking people what they want in order to stay. So really, sometimes when we say, okay, you've got a great rock star on your team, right, and they suddenly say they're leaving, and our initial reaction as bosses, managers, directors is to say, well, what do you need? You know, what can I give you? Let me make it rain in here. I'm going to give you more money, right? Or yeah, I'll let you have more time. But rather than be reactionary, how are we nurturing along the way when we see this person be a rock star, when we see this person be great, how are we ensuring that they're happy as opposed to reacting to when they say they're going to leave? Because that's what we kind of tend to do, you know? So I think it's important that we acknowledge that. Another question we asked them, and we asked the direct staff, is what sustains and motivates you? And this is what they gave us. Being surrounded by really fun people, great culture, and there's that word again, culture and community, opportunity to network, a greater mission, having a steady stream of new clients and new challenges. I think sometimes we forget that this work can be, although rewarding, can be very stagnating and very stagnant. And we have to allow people to kind of have different experiences. My supervisor and my team, fun activities again, retreats, etc. Creative and other professional opportunities. So you're seeing kind of a lot of repetition here in terms of what people are saying. Freedom to make my daily schedule, being told I'm doing a good job, the reward of when clients get a job. And the reason I put salary last, we all know that this field and this work doesn't pay a lot. And it was interesting because fewer than 10% of the responses noted money as being the reason to stay. And I understand, right? We all got to eat. We all got shoes to buy. We all want to go watch a play, watch a movie, all that stuff. But it was interesting for us when we started this that was the last thing that people were saying. So one of the things, when we talked about going back to that idea about how are we nurturing, cultivating, and mentoring, is we tend to forget, we ask them and say, well, how are you doing with your job? How are you doing with that placement? But we don't check in and see where they're at in terms of where are they in their cycle of renewal. Some of you may have seen or heard about the predictable cycle of renewal.
Webinar.
Oops.
But are you going to be around this afternoon? Okay.
Someone's not muted, so.
Sorry, Wally. Got it.
That's okay. Okay. So for those of you who may have heard about this, it's really interesting because it's really an easy way to kind of to be an indicator of where you are at and where your team is at. So you have to ask yourself, why are you there? What led you to the stage in your cycle, and how do you move forward? So here is the predictable cycle of renewal. This is from the Hudson Institute in Santa Barbara. It's an amazing transformative process for me to go through this. And this is what it looks like. And it's 4 stages in your cycle. You can see there's go for it, the doldrums, cocooning, and getting ready. So let's go through this. So typically, and the reason why, we look at the cycle is that this is what we thought was the deal, right? We all know that sometimes the way we thought things were going to work out don't work out. Hard work, our lives are very complex, change is always happening, and the future is not predictable. And this is the rule that we thought was going to happen in our lives, that be honest, work hard, you're going to get this, you're going to get success, you're going to get security, you're going to get happiness, and you're going to get progress. Well, that doesn't work out that way. And a lot of people will fall into these cycles. Now let's look at this. Phase 1. This is the go for it phase. And a lot of people who start in this field, this is where they're at, right? They're excited. They're like, yeah, I'm going to be the man. I'm going to get 25 jobs tomorrow. I'm going to be the best job developer, or I believe in an inclusive community. They've got this high energy. They've got this plan. They've got this dream, and they're ready to go for it. And I think we see a lot of that in the people we hire, the brand new people, either whether they're fresh out of college or this is their first job doing supported employment. They are pumped. Then, unfortunately, they don't sustain this. Or if we don't check in with them enough on this, we have to help them sustain this, because otherwise they fall into this. And this is the doldrums. The doldrums is really a period of detachment and restlessness, and we all know what that looks like. You are thinking about, why am I here? Oh my God, I got 10 people slam the door in my face today. I got 6 employers say no. I had another individual lose their job. You feel disenchanted, you're trapped, you're angry, and then you're defeated. Now, people can really easily recognize if they're in this phase And a lot of supervisors and directors will recognize and say, yeah, I think some of my people are on this. But how do we address that? And this is the most dangerous place in your cycle of renewal, because this is where people can dwell the longest. If we allow people to dwell in the doldrums, and if they don't move out from this, they're going to do crappy work, they're going to become very toxic, and you're going to see the outcomes not happen. You know, they're stuck in this place of anger, resentment, and depression almost, right? So, what do we need to do? This is when you're in this period of the doldrums, and we have to move them out of there, because this is the most important part for any of us, right? This is where you have to look at this mini transition. And you have to say, I'm in the doldrums, what do I need to do? And this is how you kind of have to ask these difficult questions. You say, for the individual as well as for the boss, what do I hold on to? What do I let go of? What do I take on? Is there something else I can do differently? And what do I move on? In terms of, is there a new approach or a different action I can take? And so we, as directors, supervisors, even as mentors for our team, how do we help them do that? Now at Northwest Center, we have, whenever someone starts, they have a mentor. And not just a manager or supervisor, but a colleague or a peer who is their mentor to help them learn the job and also check in with them where they are in their cycle, because we found that to be really, really successful. The turnover rate, I've been the director of Northwest Center for 6 years, and our turnover rate is fantastic. And I think it's not just because of me, and not because of the culture we've created, but because of that support and that mentoring about where are you at, how can I help you? Okay? And if you guys have any questions on this, again, I am kind of going through this quickly because we have a lot to kind of go over. But the work on this cycle of renewal, especially in this stage, can be very detailed. I did a training in Maryland about a year ago on working on this, and this was only supposed to be a portion of that training. But people resonated so strongly with this and said, we need to find a way to move ourselves along. And we focused the entire afternoon on working on this mini transition. So after you're in the doldrum phase, if we do this mini transition and help them get out of the doldrums, what happens is the cocooning phase. And you start kind of, and I think we all know what that looks like. You kind of detach a little bit, and you're really doing some inner work. You're really thinking about, okay, well, is this the place for me? You're not unhappy anymore, and you're not trapped anymore. You're at the place of saying, I can't stay in this place anymore. So I have to kind of work on my decision, work on my strategies, work on my approaches, etc., etc. So you kind of map out for yourself and you restructure, how do I then kind of renew myself in terms of this job? You spend some time alone, or you spend some time with others, and you ask really good questions. And I think that's really important, because even though it's inner work, that doesn't mean it's all by yourself. And if you have, there's a great book, or a great, I can't remember what it is, but it says, do you have a best friend at work? And I'm not saying that you have, a best friend, you go shopping during lunchtime or all of that stuff, but do you have someone you can connect to, who you can confide in, that will help you through this process? I think that's really important. Okay? Now the cocooning phase is really kind of, people don't know if they're in the cocooning phase. Because sometimes they feel like they're still stuck in the doldrums. And we're in that place where the cocooning phase is just as important for us to tap in with our team and to tune into our team, because they'll need help moving into that. They'll need help, again, asking the right questions. It's not just about how do I job develop better, but what is my approach? I'm struggling with this. I don't know how to move forward, and we have to be able to prepare to answer those questions. Now, if we get back into the cocooning phase, and the one great thing is that after all of that happens, then they get into the getting ready phase. And this is when they're saying, okay, I've moved past on. I either need to decide, this is what I'm going to try, this is what I'm going to let go of, I'm going to take some risks, and maybe it just means getting ready to leave. And if that means that we have to help them leave and go somewhere else, maybe that's our job as well. So, it's really kind of scary sometimes when we know someone's in this phase, because that can mean that they go somewhere else. But if we can let them get ready, because after getting ready, it goes right back into the go for it stage again. It could be a change of clients. It could be a change of offices. It could be a change of duties. It could be a change of approaches. And that helps people renew themselves again and goes back in that cycle. Now, the thing about the cycle of renewal, if you go back and look at it, is that, I'm going all the way back, it is a cycle, and it has to be a cycle. So it's not as if you jump all around. So after the go for it, if you're in the go for it phase, it's a brand new project, it's a brand new day, brand new boss or whatever, something's going to happen, it's going to take you back to the doldrums, right? But if you've experienced it before and you know how to get out of it, it'll help you move forward even better. So the thing about all of these phases is that, they could last for a week, they could last for a day, they could last for a year. And I think it's really important for the work that we do to pay attention with that, and how do we again keep our team motivated, and how do we then nurture our team. So when I talked about the exercise we do, and I think this is something, and I wish I could do it with you guys, but it's hard over the phone, obviously. But one of the things you can do is to ask yourself this. Can I self-identify right now? So sit right now, kind of look at that, and kind of say, where am I at, right? And then the question to ask yourself, or even to work with your team if you want to do this, and I believe I'm going to be working on some of this with the Goodwill people in Iowa in a month, is what can I do? So in the go for it phase, ask yourself, what do I need to do to sustain this? This is an awesome feeling. I feel so great, I'm so jazzed, but I know it's not going to last very long. But what do I need to do to sustain it for as long as possible? And then in the doldrums phase, something to think about is really questioning and say, what brought me here? What was that tipping point that put me in this doldrums phase? And it could have been a gradual thing. Maybe it's not a deep cut. Maybe it was just tiny little, needle points on it. But you have to ask yourself, what is it? And what are the strategies I need to move forward? Because if you just say what brought me here, then you're just going to dwell in that. Okay, yeah, this sucks, or I don't want to do this. But then you have to say, on the flip side, well, what do I need to do to get out of here? Okay? And then the cocooning phase, you have to ask yourself, what do I need to do to reawaken myself? What is it? And it could be a lot of different things. It was really funny because I mentioned when I did the training in Maryland with the groups, there was about 125 people. Happy hour was a lot of answers that people gave. Happy hour. Someone just put whiskey in both letters. So, hey, whatever works, right? But not on the job. So we should remind ourselves of that. How do I reawaken myself? And then in the getting ready phase, what can I do to launch myself back? And I use the word launch because getting ready to go back into the go for it phase, you got to step it up and be pumped up again. Because otherwise, if you're not preparing yourself in the getting ready phase to go to the go for it phase, that go for it phase is going to last all of a week or 2 days, right? And then you're going to be back in the doldrums again. So look at this, and I know sometimes people see this as being very, I don't want to say touchy-feely, but when it comes to the staff, again, the people who do the work for us, I always say this, that the most important customer of any agency, people will answer differently and say, well, it's the clients, it's the families, it's VR or funders. I always say the most important customer Northwest Center is the team, is the people who work here. And I want to make sure that we're taking care of them so that they can take care of the work that needs to be done. So this is really important for me. So when we talk about motivation, and that motivation is a big word. And we saw some of the answers that other people gave in that process about how do I motivate myself or how to motivate my team. And I've really broken it down. There's the great book called Drive by Daniel Pink. That some of the topics of this come from him, as well as my own experiences. There's a lot of different books out there in terms of motivation and how to keep your team going. But it breaks it down into really 3 simple key components. And that is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So autonomy, people hear that word and say, well, our job developers are autonomous. They get to go and do out their own thing and all that kind of stuff. Or I'm a great boss. I let them do their own thing. Well, that's different. So let's see how it breaks down. And we talk about that culture again, and we talk about that, and we say, are you creating conditions for people to do their best work? One of the people who came to my agency from another agency, he told me all about the different conditions that they had that wasn't making it able for him to be successful. The way we have our team members clock in, they all have their individual iPhones. They can clock in and out on their phones. At his other agency, he had to drive to the office, clock in there, even though the clients he was serving were maybe, another half hour away. So and then he would have to go back at the end of the day and clock out, which didn't allow him a lot of time to be very creative or successful because he was just dreading commuting back and forth to clock in and out. So that's just a simple example about saying, well, are we creating conditions for people to do their best work? Now, autonomy can be broken down to 4 different subtopics. And these we call them the 4 T's of autonomy. And that's task, technique, time, and team. So take a look at this, right? 4 T's. First one is tasks. We ask the people and say, what are you good at? Are you harnessing your strengths? What do you want to be better at? Because sometimes we have to look and say, here's the job of being a job developer. And it means you have to do these notes, you have to do, phone calls, you have to go out there, you have to work with the clients. But we say individually, the way we kind of break down, it's like looking at a customized employment, right? If we're breaking down a task of the job and say, you're really good at this, okay, maybe I give you more responsibility on this, or maybe I have you be the person to review all of the assessments that we do because you're a really good writer. All that kind of stuff. And we say, are we harnessing their strengths and letting them use it to the best way for the team? The other one is technique. We always say that people learn in different ways. We know this when we job coach, right? Some people might want to do it by modeling. Some people need visual task lists. Some people need prompting. So it's all different. And having people really identify what's the best way they learn, because I've got one person on my team says, I need a training manual. I need a booklet and a binder to tell me how to do my job. Great. Another person on my team, I give him the binder. He'll toss it in the garbage. He learns best by doing it side by side with somebody, by shadowing, by throwing himself in the trenches. So I'm not going to force my techniques or my way because Alex is going to be way more successful going out there than Wilson is by using a training manual and binder. This is how they find their success. This is how they hone their technique and their style. Time. Time for me, this is where it gets kind of funky because some people get really caught up in the equity part of this. And what I mean by this is that not everyone produces in the same time frame. And I really allow my team to kind of work through their day the best way they know how. I mentioned Alex, and Alex is an amazing guy. He can be in here for 5 hours and get more work done than anyone I know. He can jam it and get through it, and he's done. I'm not going to keep him at that 8-hour period because he has got done so much. And yet there's another person on my team named Susan who is very meticulous. She needs her
Wally, I think you might have muted yourself, possibly.
Am I gone? Am I dead?
There you are. You're back. We lost you, I
Okay.
think, yeah, just in the last 30 seconds we lost you.
Oh, weird. Okay. So I was talking about Susan in terms of her time frame, and she needs full 8 hours. And one of the things you talk about too is that people will learn at their own time frame and their own pace. Someone might need to be shadowed or mentored for just 2 times. Let me go out with you for 2 visits to job develop. Let me see your style. I got it. Some people might need 6. We have to allow people to kind of absorb it the way they can. And then set strong and consistent deadlines for the team. For me, I say this is when this is due. This is when I have set deadlines for things that are done. That way they know it's consistent for them. And that way they have a time frame to say this is due, no ifs, ands, or buts on this specific day. They're allowed to set their schedule around that time. And then team. And we'll get into the team concept in a little bit here, because when we talk about all of that, right, the individual is just as strong as the team and the leader. We have to ask yourself, everyone has a leadership role in the team, not just the director, not just the manager. And is everyone helping everyone else be great at what they do? Are we supporting, or are we being toxic? Are we mentoring, or are we knocking them down? So how do you help everyone grow as a leader? Because I really believe that everyone, and there's a leadership exercise I do as well, we're not going to get into that today, but everyone can be a leader. And that's one of the things I really believe in, that everyone in the team, how do we help them become growth leaders? So autonomy, one of the most important things is that we see is that when you have people and people match those 4 T's, right, productivity rises, stress decreases. I've seen it. People can argue it all they want. I've seen it out loud. People are allowed to be great in the way they can be. But the most important thing to say is that autonomy is not saying, okay, go out and do it, or you go do your own thing. Autonomy does not mean that you ignore. You have to constantly support. One of the bullets I don't have in here is that when it comes to the work we do, especially with autonomy, there is ignorance and there is ignorance. You know what I mean? So it's ignorance where it's like, oh my God, I didn't know that. I didn't know how to do that. And then there's ignorance where, I don't care. I'm not going to pay attention. So we have to realize the difference between the two. And how are we then addressing our place? Especially, again, same thing going back to that cycle. The ignorance part, with the ignorance part, I should say, it's like, oh, I didn't know you were in that place. And then the ignorance part is, well, I really wasn't paying attention. So we all have a responsibility in that role. The second part of key of motivation is mastery. So David Mank, who some of you may know, is that he has a saying that if someone isn't doing their job well, it's either attitude or aptitude, or both. You either don't know how to do your job, and so no one's ever taught you, or you know how and you don't give a damn. So you have to look at this and say, where are people at? Are we having people who really know how to do the job but aren't being mentored or led the right way? Or do we have people who really know how to do it but they're not giving it all they can do? So paying attention to that, attitude and aptitude. I was at one of the things we do in Washington State with our employment consultants and with different agencies, we do something called Off the Clock that we've been doing for over 10 years now. Every other month, we invite employers, employment consultants, directors, county staff, state staff, and we get together. It's all off the clock. You have some wine, you have some chicken wings, etc. But I remember we're sitting around, there were a bunch of new employment consultants, and I asked each one of them and said, okay, tell me about your most recent job placement, and how did you make it happen? We were on the table, There's about 4 or 5 of them there. And I finally got to the last one. And I asked her, and she said, well, I haven't placed anyone yet, but I am still pretty new. And I said, okay, that's fine. Well, how long have you been there? She said, well, about 11 months, 12 months. And I was shocked. I was blown away. And I thought, and I asked her, I said, well, how does that make you feel? And she said, well, I don't know if I'm doing a good job. So for herself, she wasn't sure if this was the expectation or if she really doesn't know if this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So she wasn't given the clear opportunity to do it, and her aptitude was not very strong. So when we look at that, and you all know this quote here, so whatever you are, be a good one. And going back to that conversation, are you clear on your duties and your role? Are we setting clear expectations for our team and say, hey, I need you to get 6 placements this year, or I need you to get this individual a job this month? She had no idea if she was doing well, if she was floundering, etc. So no one obviously was mentoring her or checking in, and she didn't even know if she needed it or not. And what a difficult place for her to be. We have to build competence, and that goes back to the training part. How do we train? Are we training right away? And I always like to give small tasks to my team members to make them feel successful right away, providing clear and constant feedback. We look for mentors. Mentorship is something that we're really strong on in our state, and I think you've seen or you've heard me speak about it a lot. And this is what's really important, is that we say mastery doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. Excellence does not require perfection. Look, we all want to be better at our job. We all want to be that guy or that woman who gets all the placements, etc. But we're going to stumble. We're going to make mistakes. But that doesn't mean you're still not good at it. And then the last one is purpose. And I think sometimes we forget. If you look back, and when I send this PowerPoint to you, you're going to see some of the comments that all the other employment providers made, and it all connects to purpose. And this is the third component. You can have someone who's really autonomous at their job and has their style and is really good at it. But if it isn't anchored by their purpose, then they're not going to be most satisfied. They're not going to be sustainable. There's a story about this assembly plant where workers were working there and they're putting all these widgets and parts together, and their quotas were raised. And they were all complaining and moaning and said, this stinks, I quit, all this stuff. So the boss got wind of that and came down and said, do you know what it is we're making? And they said what they were making were pieces of pacemakers for children. And so when people realized that, when they learned what the purpose of what they were doing is, the complaining stopped. They all realized, this is what we're making, this is what we're doing, and this is why we up those quotas. We have to align people's passion, interests, and skills. Be clear on the mission and goals. I think telling our success stories and having people feel success is what's going to continue to have the purpose. So that mentorship piece, that checking in piece, that all connects, right? Know your values, renew your vision. That's obviously pretty self-explanatory. So, and creating the environment and team to support the purpose, because one person can be really strong and really believe the purpose, but if everyone else around them, especially the leadership, doesn't have that same kind of value, then that person can only be so strong by themselves. And we talk about culture again, and we talk about team, and we're going to get into that right now. So team dynamics are really important. Has a big impact on all the success of your company, the retention rates, team and individual performance, company reputation. We talked about the turnover part again, but people will know, wow, your team's really strong. I think people in Washington State will point to Northwest Center and my team, the culture we've created, as being a really strong and celebratory one. We have to look at the overall culture that we create. And I put that in bold again because that's a word that people tend to forget. So look at this, and you can identify for yourself right now what team or what type of work culture you have, either work culture or team culture. Is it hierarchical? where there's a strong chain of command, and before you can even buy a Post-it pad, you got to get that expense report signed off 17 times, right? Before you can even send an email, someone has to look at it and approve it, etc., etc. And I'm not saying any of these are good or bad. You just have to ask yourself, what is it that I'm in, and is it the right place for me? There's competition, where everyone is driven to succeed at all costs. There's that turf, that proprietary, that ownership. Well, when I came to Northwest Center, we had this team and no one shared any leads. They never met as a team. They said, well, that's my customer or that's my employer. You can't go there. And I thought, wait a minute, you don't own anything. You work for Northwest Center. If you're self-employed, then that's yours. So we had to change that idea. There's collaborative, which encourages common ground for the good of the company and shared glory. And I will say that's our team right now. It's very collaborative, where everyone shares every lead they have, and if your client doesn't have it, then it's for everybody. It's up for grabs, right? And very creative. We allow people to kind of pursue the learnings and opportunities that they want to sustain themselves. So take a look at this and really kind of say, where am I at? And if you're not where you want to be, how do you then change that? And do you have the opportunity to? When we create your team, there was a study that showed the number and the size of the team really affects it. When I took over the Northwest Center and this team, we had 27 people, and I was the boss of all of them. And it got really cumbersome for me. I didn't feel like I was giving them the attention they needed. They didn't have the direction they needed. And so we broke it up into different teams where they all report to me per se, but they all have a manager now. So we have 3 different teams that are all broken down. And you can look at this because team size and composition and formation can really affect how your team performs. 5 to 12 is optimal. Now, fewer than 5 really did not work really well. And why do you think that is? The reason for that is that when you have 5, you don't have as many people coming to the table. And you're always going to
Wally, we lost you again there. I mean, I see that you're on, but you're muted again.
with, but as a team and with the same goal in mind, we want to break that up. It was hard to be effectively an effective leader for them. So team effectiveness is not always just looking at outcomes and say, okay, our team's really strong. Oh, why? Oh, because we got 700 placements this year. It's not just about that. How do you define success? Well, no one left this year. Everyone's really happy. They're getting along. People are not in the doldrums. Or if people are in the doldrums, we're helping them get out of there. So really looking at what a truly effective team is and how it will kind of impact the success. So it's really talking about, the front end, right? Before you get into the learnings and the workings of job development, all that kind of stuff, you got to talk about what are you building before all of that happens. So there's 2 different teams. There's interdependent and there's independent. Take a look at this again as well. And it looks like my PowerPoint got cut off. I apologize for that. But you can ask for yourselves who's in this, which kind of team you're at. I did a training here in Washington down on the other side of the mountains, and there was about 50 people there, and I brought this slide up. And I had people raise their hand and say, which team are you in? And people raised their hands, and there's about 5 people who said they were in the independent team. And they kind of looked very sad, and they looked very unhappy. And I said, well, how does that make you feel to be in an independent team where you're just kind of by yourself? And this person said, and I'll never forget, feels like I'm suffering in isolation. That's a powerful, powerful statement. So look at this, and you say an interdependent team is that everyone has to, I play volleyball, so I use that as an example, as an analogy, is that if I'm the outside hitter, unless the setter gives me a good set, I can't go up and pound that, right? But the setter relies on the passer to pass the ball to him or her so that they can, in result, set me. So everyone's kind of aligned in my team. If this one person is responsible for this and is supposed to follow up on this, how do we connect on that? So look at that, because, and again, you can decide for yourself if this is better or worse for you, but define it for yourself and say, does this work for me? Some agencies work really well as independent teams, and hey, more power to them. But I've seen it work, I've seen it both ways at Northwest Center, and I will say the interdependent team works much stronger for our success. And now we ask ourselves, like, well, you know, we have a high-performing agency, you know, and someone asked me and said, do you think we're a high-performing team? And I looked at her in the face, I said, I think you're a very high-performing agency, but I don't think you're a high-performing team. And this is why, is that in their agency, if you look at that group or agency, everyone worked there, but everyone did their own thing, right? And you had the boss in the front, and everyone said, you go here, you go here, you go here, you go here. And no one knew what the other portion, what the other red dot was doing. No one knew what was responsible for what. You know, I worked at a place like that where I was responsible for 2 projects, and it was mine. And then there's one point where it got really cumbersome and I needed help, but no one knew what I was doing. And I also realized, hey, if I got run over by a bus tomorrow, no one would be able to carry on the work that I was doing. So we have to look at this and say, how we collaborate. Now you look at the team diagram, and everyone is moving in a different way, but all towards a different goal, right? But what's missing in that team diagram? If someone can type in and tell me what they think is missing in that team diagram. I'll give you $1 if you can answer it. I'll send you some Seattle candy or salmon or something. Ooh, multiple attendees are typing. Look at that, I love it. Someone says leadership, someone says the central point of knowledge, some type of center point. There you go, supervisor leadership. Great. That's exactly it, right? The leader's not there. And if you're going to say that you're a high-performing team, then the leader has to be just as integral in that part. And someone will say, put a blue dot. You know what, if I'm moving the same way, yeah, maybe I'm a blue dot, but I should be a red blue dot because I'm working it with you. Leadership to me is threefold. You can lead, you lead from the back, you lead from the side, and you lead from the front. You lead from the back, and you say, hey, if you fall, I'm there to pick you up. Lead from the side, I'm walking this journey with you. Lead from the front, let me show you the path and show you where to go. And that's what it should all be. So the way we sustain ourselves here at Northwest Center, and I'm going to wrap up here a little bit so you guys have questions. This is what I've done. This is what I've found with my team. Whenever I interview somebody, I'm very clear and I ask certain questions about, because our team is, for good or for bad, is very intimate. We know each other really well. We support each other really well. And yeah, sometimes we get into each other's business, which we'd want to be careful about. But whenever we bring a new component to the team, I say, this is the culture you're coming into. Are you going to be okay with this? How are you going to contribute? So I'll ask them and say, hey, if we're planning a staff advance, people will say retreat. We don't retreat, we advance. That's just my phrasing. What would you plan for a staff advance? Someone said a Zumba class. Someone said an improv class. Someone said one of those locked puzzle rooms, which I want to do. So the idea about how do we bond together, you know, that's really important to me. I talked about off the clock. One of the things we've done, and this is along the whole field of supported employment in Washington, we collaborate really well with our other competitors and colleagues, really. So we had a supported employment Olympics. We decided to challenge each other in a series of events. We had 5 events. We did volleyball, we did kickball, we did bowling, we did backyard games like 3-legged race and egg toss and all that kind of stuff. And we won. Northwest Center won their first year. Really fun, but it was also that bonding about, hey, we're all in this together, right? We have a holiday showdown, and that's something we do. We take a picture with Santa, and we have team competitions. And then for conferences, we understand conferences are important for people. I think everyone who comes on your team should always have this desire to learn. And yet, you know, conferences are expensive, and you can't have everyone go. So we do it scholarship style. I say you get to go to 1 or 2 conferences every year based on budget. And I want you to write or apply and tell me what it is, why do you want to go to this conference? What are you going to learn from it? And who would you want to have go with you? So we do it in that style where it's kind of very teamwork. So here's our team. So the one on the left is our Christmas picture from last year, when we took a picture with Santa. So my team, they're kind of jerks. They all came in Canadian tuxedos, which for those of you who don't know is all denim. And of course, they did not tell me. So we had a lot of fun, you know, and that's the culture we create. And they have that kind of camaraderie. And then the other picture is our volleyball, when we played volleyball. So we have a lot of fun, but I always say we work hard, but we play just as hard. There has to be that balance to sustain ourselves. And I know for me that's really important. That's what sustains me, is my connection to my team and the ability for us to have a good time. And that's what makes me be better at what I do. So when we talk about leadership, we talk about growth leaders, right? I see leadership could grow this way. Unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competence. So again, I want someone to chime in and tell me, what do you think this means? What is the difference between the first block and then the last block? And I'm writing down names for those of you who are answering, because I like it. No one's typing. Oh, Misty Johnson, way to go. Everyone else feel free to type in. Because you think I'm kidding if you think I'm not going to send prizes. So you do things with guided leadership without thinking about it. Very cool. So a lot of the people type as they do it. But yes, unconscious incompetence leadership is that when you go in, it's like when we first introduced recycling, right, into Washington State, people had no idea. They said, is this recyclable? Does this go here? Where does this go, right? And they didn't even know if they had to recycle. But now at the end, when it gets to unconscious competence, we just know how to do it. We'll just get a tray. We just know where things go. And leadership, and our leadership style in terms of our work, should be one of those things that we don't even have to think about. We've learned, we have our mastery, we have our purpose, and now our leadership is there. We've just become, yes, Amy. First block is I'm not aware, I don't know how. Last block is we don't even have to think about it, but I know what to do. So it's one of those things where we have to gauge, going back in the same way, this is in its way like a cycle of renewal. This is like a cycle of leadership. Not really a cycle, but really a path. And most people, when they come in, when they do this job, they're going to be this unconscious incompetence place, right? Where they're like, I know I'm supposed to find someone a job, I don't know how. And suddenly they're going to be at this last place like, I'm just doing it. And same thing with the team, in terms of how we connect with the team. So this is how we develop growth leaders. And it all breaks into this. The person is clear about the organization's missions, values, and strategy, and direction. You know, and I know it's kind of funny. I like to test my team every so often and say, recite our mission statement to us. Because sometimes we forget, right? It's a mission statement that we put on our marketing pamphlet or on the back of our business cards or whatever. But if we remind ourselves of it every day, or if you feel like your mission statement at your agency needs to be rewritten, that's really a cornerstone of what we do. And are they equipped with the right structure, like mentoring, information, skills, and tools? Are they sustained by their leaders? And sustainability, again, is important. It's not the check-in every 3 months or when you do their annual review. Are you sustaining them? And this leadership branding part, that's on there, but that's a different exercise I do when we talk about leadership growth. it's a wonderful dynamic about saying, what do I bring as a leader that's unique and significant? And that's something that I'm not going to be able to do, unfortunately. So going back to this. So here we go, come full circle. Here's the cycle of this webinar. This was the information that people gave when I said from the poll, how do we get good people to stay? And here's all the answers. And if you look, they're all tied to stuff. Clear and belief in the mission is purpose. Nurtured, mentored, that's mastery. Autonomy. So everything that people are saying, it's all tied to those three key components of motivation. And all of that can be, if you kind of wrap everything up, and we talk about the culture, sustainability, the cycle of renewal. I always say that this work that we do is a privilege and it's a responsibility. So we have a responsibility to be great at it, but we also have a responsibility to be great to ourselves to sustain the work that we do. Because all of this great work is just going to stay in one place unless people believe in it and do it. Because once people stop coming through your door, because I think we all have trouble recruiting, right? And then once people leave that door, then all of that work that we've done is done. So here's the final thoughts on this, and hey, good timing. I say check into your cycle renewal on a regular basis. Always. And here's the thing, and I forgot to mention this, people can be in a different stage in their cycle of renewal, both professionally and personally. Someone can be in the doldrums in their relationship, but maybe because of their personal life, they're in the go for it phase. They're like, yeah, man, my home life stinks, but my work life is awesome. Or vice versa. But sometimes it can connect. If someone's in the doldrums in their home life, it's going to affect their work life maybe. So checking into that, right? People can grow in other ways than up. And what I mean by that is we talk about leadership and we talk about sustainability and opportunities. Opportunities doesn't just mean title, because there can be leadership without title. You can be a leader without being a manager, a supervisor, or a coordinator, whatever. Do you have a new role that you're responsible of that then you are the leader of? And how do we allow the people on our team who deserve that opportunity to become leaders beyond a fancy new title? So all this on that cycle renewal in terms of that path is that we believe that success should fuel happiness, but really it's the other way around. And this is, I say this here when I say things become extinct because they're supposed to. When we look at sustainability, renewable, and people staying motivated, there are times that no matter how hard you try, and this is for the directors out there, as well as direct staff, if you're feeling stuck and you can't get through, and for the directors who have staff who can't move forward and then become toxic, then maybe it's time you say, hey, maybe it's time to move on. Because there's only so much work that we can do where it becomes more work than it should be. We have, again, that privilege and that responsibility to be a part of this community. And I've been doing this for, 18 years. And I think that people who are in it will need the supports along the way. So how do we give them that? So thank you so much. And please, if you have any other questions, type them in. I know I tried to cover a lot in this hour time, but hey, I think I did it. It's an hour, 11:58 or 11:59. What do you do if some of your team members, not the entire team, okay, here's a question I'm reading. What do you do if some of your team members, not the entire team, think that any type of team building or affirmation activities are stupid? That's very true, right? Because how do you find that balance? And maybe ask them, what's important to you as a team building thing? It's important that the team get together. What part of it do you want to be a part of? How do you contribute? How can you then, do you want to give that person the responsibility of performing the next team building activity? Because it's really interesting to me is that, and maybe you might want to ask yourself, is this person in the right culture? If the rest of your culture is this, and everyone buys into it, but this one person isn't, but they're great, how do we help them fit in? How do we find their niche? Because sometimes the right people are in the wrong culture. So getting buy-in from him or her, and having him or her be responsible for some of that, because there might be some things that he or she might not think are dumb that are important to him or her that they might want to do. And maybe the team will, buy into that as well. And we have that as well. There are some times, I tell you, let me say this out loud. There's been a lot of times where my team wants to go do paintball. And one person on my team is like, there is no way you are not going to shoot me with paint. And so we find, different balances in that. And we say, okay, what do you want? And we're able to do that. We all have a good time because we support her. So I know that's kind of a wrap here. And I appreciate everybody's attention. Again, I know this is really just a quick one. For those of you with the Goodwill of the Heartland, I think I'll be there doing this in more detail as well as some other stuff. And we can
Oh, you're muted, Wally. Still there, Wally?
Am I there?
There you go. There you are.
Oh,
We
wow,
lost
that was
you.
weird.
I know.
Okay, anyway, I think that's it. If anyone has any other questions or if anyone needs anything, I really appreciate this time. And I hope people were able to get something from it. I'll get a copy of the slides. I will be sending it to Jessica. I just will have to, and she'll be getting it out to all of you.
Thank you so much, Wally.
Thank
What a
you
great
so much.
presentation. Yes. And as Wally said, he'll send me his presentation. We'll just do some formatting changes.
Yeah.
I'm going to open up the polls here. I'm sure we would all appreciate some feedback, including Wally. He'd love to hear what you loved about the webinar today and what you're going to be implementing in the weeks ahead with your team. Again, I'll send out the recording and the closed captioning transcript along with Wally's presentation within, hopefully by the end of the week, if not within the next couple of days. I want to pull your attention to the bottom left-hand corner where you can download a copy of the 2000 ZIA practice schedule if you haven't already. And we will be returning February 16th at 1 p.m. where we'll have Karen Williams with Trillium, again out of Washington, and she'll be talking about the decentralization of staff and services. And just to be sure, David, is there anything we missed?
No, thank you very much, Wally, and thank you, Jessica. We'll give you the last word here.
All right, sounds good. Again, just let us know what your feedback is, and we appreciate you joining us today. And we'll be sure to send out all the materials as soon as possible. And thanks again, Wally. It's quite a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you. Everyone have a good day. Bye-bye.